Dear students, we all are familiar with a few diseases like smallpox, chickenpox, polio, hepatitis B, influenza, HIV/AIDS, mumps. And what is common with all these names is that they all are the viral diseases, means they are caused by the pathogen virus. So if we are asked what is a virus, then the first image that comes in our mind that they might be a kind of microorganisms that can enter easily in the host body as other organisms do. So when they get entry in the host body, the host can be the plant or it can be animal, bacteria, fungi, any type of host can be there. So when they get entry in that host body, they start multiplication there, reproduction there, start deriving their nutrition like other organisms, other pathogens, and in this process with time the host become weak and develops the signs of that particular disease. So this is the image that we have in our mind if we haven't studied the viruses. But are these viruses actually the cellular forms or not? Should we place them under the category of cellular or acellular forms? Do they possess features of living organisms or not? This we have to study in this lecture. So what are the viruses? What are their properties? What is their structure actually look like? Let's start with the very first term, virus. Virus, if we are going to simplify this term, means the poisonous fluid, and this term was given by Louis Pasteur. So before discussing about all the properties of viruses, how they look like, we have to first of all quote names of a few scientists who have contributed in providing information about these pathogens. First of all, let's quote name of D.J. Vanosky. D.J. Vanosky in 1892, he provided a very important information about these pathogens. He was studying a plant of tobacco, and this tobacco plant was infected with a pathogen which I am not going to name now. That pathogen was responsible for mosaic pattern on the leaf of that plant, means the leaves were patchy, they were having yellow spots all over the leaves. So this scientist, he was studying, he was finding out what type of pathogens are responsible for diseases, this disease in tobacco. He used bacterial filter to isolate them. Bacterial filters are actually those devices which can filter the bacteria, means the device have the pores or the spaces which will not allow, which are smaller than the bacterial size, which will not allow the bacteria to pass through it. So he was using the bacterial filter to filter out, to filter the pathogens responsible for this disease. And what striking observation was then that the pathogens responsible for that disease, that mosaic disease in leaves, they easily filtered out through these bacterial filters. So what this observation indicated, that size of those pathogens were smaller than the bacteria. That's why they easily passed out through that filter, bacterial filter. This was observation of D.J. Vanosky. The second scientist's name is M.W. Bezrenik, and this M.W. Bezrenik in 1898 he gave some important observation. The information was again based on this pathogen which was responsible for this mosaic disease in tobacco plant. What he did, he extracted the content of the leaf, infected leaf. Say he taken out the infected leaf having the patches, mosaic appearance, and extracted all the content of that leaf. After this, he spread that content or that extract on the healthy parts, and he observed that all those healthy parts on which he had spread this content or this extract of infected leaf, they all get infected because of that extract. That means that extract was having that pathogen, and he called that extract as Contagium vivum fluidum, means infectious living fluid. That fluid from the leaf was infectious. It was holding the pathogen which was responsible for infection in the healthy leaves. Okay? And the third scientist name is W.M. Stanley. In 1935, very important information that he had provided, that while experimenting on these viruses, these pathogens, he observed that these viruses can be crystallized. Crystallization is possible in case of non-living things only. The living matter can't be crystallized, but this property was linked to these viruses or these pathogens, and this was observation of W.M. Stanley, 1935. So this was the historical aspect of these viruses. Now let's start the property of these viruses. First of all, let's study the structure of the virus. A typical virus, actually this is a diagram of a bacteriophage, just to show the details, but in general, if we are going to talk about the structure of the virus, then we should say that each virus has a protein cover. Protein cover, as I have also shown in this diagram, there is a proteinous cover which is known as capsid. This capsid is made up of protein, and the units of this capsid is known as capsomers. Sometimes there are a few cases in which this capsid is also covered by an envelope. Say this is the capsid, and this is again covered by a external cover which is known as envelope. The envelope may have spikes or some antigen proteins. So this envelope is not present in all the viruses, but capsid is present in all the viruses. This capsid, which is made up of proteinous capsomers, is actually covering a space. Here I haven't shown any protoplasm or cytoplasm or any cellular structure. This is simply a space, empty space you can see. And this empty space is having a thread-like structure which is known as the genetic material of this virus. This thread-like structure can be DNA or RNA. Just remind this. This is a very important point. The viruses can either have DNA or they have RNA. They never possess both DNA and RNA. So this capsid cover is holding this genetic material which can be DNA or which can be RNA, and there is no cytoplasm or no matrix. Actually this is a hollow box type of structure, hollow box, empty box, but holding a thread which is the genetic material of this virus. Here in this case, this is actually diagram of bacteriophage, and this is DNA. I have shown here the DNA, but if it is another virus, which it can be RNA also. And the shape of virus can also vary. It can be cylindrical, it can be hexagonal, polygonal. It varies from species to species. But yes, they all have a common thing, that they will be having a capsid made up of capsomers. They have a genetic material, DNA or RNA, and that material is known as nucleoid. This area is known as nucleoid holding this. Sometimes a few viruses may possess some enzymes also. They also hold some enzymes, very few enzymes. For example, we can quote example of AIDS virus. AIDS virus has a very important enzyme which is known as reverse transcriptase. So this is the additional thing the viruses may have or may not have. Enzymes, presence of enzymes. So they all have capsid, they all have this nucleoid or the genetic material, and they may have a few enzymes. Some of the viruses may have envelope which is made up of proteins. Means if I am going to show here another cover, that will be the envelope, and envelope is also proteinous in nature, which is made up of proteinous units known as peplomers. Okay. So this is the virus structure. Now in this nucleoid part, this DNA or RNA part, this is considered as the infectious part of the virus. Why we are calling it the infectious part? Because with the help of this DNA or RNA only, the virus is going to spread it in the host body. Only this nucleoid will enter in the host body, and only this DNA or RNA or its genetic material will help it to spread or multiply in the host body. That's why we are calling it the infectious. And also this capsid or this envelope, they have antigenic properties. Antigenic means they are having specialized proteins. Antigens are actually specialized proteins which will identify the specific cell of the host. When they will get entry in the host, say they have entered in plant body. So when they get entry in the plant body, in the plant cell, they will identify a particular type of cell, particular type of plant part where they have to infect. They do not get entry in all the type of cells. They have a specific type of cells in which they are going to infect or they will multiply. They are known as obligate parasites because you can see that they are not having any protoplasm, there is no living machinery. That's why they are totally dependent on the host body for their multiplication, for their reproduction. That's why they are known as obligate parasite. Without host body, they just behave as non-living thing. This is very important point that you have to remind, that they are placed in the line, dividing line of living and non-living. They are not placed completely in the living category. They are not placed completely in the living category or non-living category just because of a few features which are actually a confusing type properties, because they possess properties of both living and non-living things. So they are obligate parasite. They possess these features in their structure, and the thing that we have to remind is that they are host specific. What do you mean by host specific nature or host specificity? The viruses, they can detect a particular type of cell only. Suppose the viruses have entered in our body, and I am taking example of AIDS virus. So AIDS virus, when get entry in our body, it is going to attack only on our T helper cells, a type of WBC only. It is not going to enter in all the type of cells. It is not going to attack all the type of cells of our body. It will identify the special WBC of our body and then enter in that cell and start reproduction there or multiplication there. That's why it is known as host specific. for viruses, for the viruses which are specific for which are going to specifically attack on bacteria, they are known as bacteriophage. Just I have drawn the diagram of bacteriophage also here. Bacteriophage, phage word is used for the viruses. So bacteriophage, if they are going to infect the fungus, then you can call them the mycophage. If they are going to attack on the algae or algal cells, then you can call them the phycophage. If they are going to attack the animals, then they are called as zoophage. If the plants are infected by these viruses, then they are known as phytophage. So this depends on the type of host, what type of host they are attacking on. They are categorized accordingly. Bacteriophage are going to infect the bacteria, myco are going to infect the fungi. This is the thing we have to notice. One more property about them, that they are inert outside the host. Means if they are not in the host cell, they haven't entered in the host body, they can't multiply. They just behave like no living thing. Like chalk powder on our table, dust particles on our table. They are just like non-living things. Why they are non-living outside the host body? Because they don't have machinery of their own. They don't have any protoplasm, any raw material of their own. They are totally dependent on this host body. They will utilize the machinery of the host and then multiply only. That's why they are inert. Now let's talk about their DNA or RNA, the type of genetic material they are possessing. Depending upon the type of the genetic material they are having, they can be called as DNA viruses or RNA viruses. But if they are DNA viruses, they can have single-stranded DNA or double-stranded DNA. In general, DNA is a double-stranded molecule. But the viruses are the specific type of organisms or the particles which are, they are either having the double-stranded RNA or they may also have single-stranded RNA. Double-stranded DNA is observed in case of hepatitis B virus, while single-stranded RNA is observed in case of influenza virus. If they are RNA viruses, then the RNA can also be single-stranded or double-stranded. In general, RNA is always single-stranded, but these are the exceptional cases. The viruses are the exceptional cases where they possess double-stranded RNA also. Single-stranded RNA, it is observed in case of HIV virus, this AIDS virus, TMP tobacco mosaic virus, this is the plant virus, and polio virus. While the double-stranded RNA is observed in case of wound tumor virus. So there are all type of viruses which either have DNA or RNA, and DNA can be single or double-stranded, RNA can be single or double-stranded. These viruses, they make entry in the host cell. I will illustrate this, how they are going to infect the host cell. Let's draw a cell, how they are going to multiply. Suppose this is the host cell and suppose this is bacterial cell, and I am showing here the bacteriophage. So when it is going to infect this cell, it will just pass its DNA or RNA that it is having. Like in this case, it is having DNA. So it has passed its DNA inside this cell, and rest of the structure will remain outside the cell. Only it is going to pass its genetic material, which can be DNA, which can be RNA. This DNA or RNA has information how these viruses are going to be formed. New virus particles are going to be formed. So this DNA or RNA, it get integrated with the host cell genetic material, and then new virus particles are synthesized. So to synthesize new virus means how the new virus particles are going to form. They will need proteins to form their caps. This capsid cover, they will need new proteins. They will need new nucleotide to synthesize their genetic material also, and then it will be enveloped. So all these materials will be taken place in this cell. All these type of reaction will need specific type of enzymes also. So who is going to provide these enzymes? Who is going to provide the site? Who is going to provide the raw materials? This is the host cell only, means it is totally dependent on this host cell. It is having just its genetic material. It has just information how it has to form itself again. But it can't form itself by its own. It is totally dependent on all the type of materials that it requires on this host cell. That's why they are known as obligate parasites. So if we are going to discuss what type of organism they are, cellular or non-cellular. So they are not, obviously they are non-cellular. Cellular features are absent. If we are going to consider the cellular feature, it should have a plasma membrane, it should have a matrix known as cytoplasm, it should have the organelles, but it is lacking all these things. So it is not a cellular structure. So should we consider it living or non-living? Again I am saying it is placed on the boundary of cellular and non-cellular. The cellular features are, you can see it has all the body made up of organic compounds. This is the first point. Second point, it has its own genetic material, DNA or RNA. This is the property of living organisms, that they have genetic material. And in some cases, the viruses also have enzymes. This is also a property of living organisms. They can reproduce when they get entry in this cell. They will reproduce. This is also a property of living organism. So on these properties, basis of this property, we should place them in the cellular or this living in the category of living organisms. But there are a few properties that make them like non-living things. Like they can be crystallized, as this was observed by W.M. Stanley, that these viruses can be easily crystallized. Second thing, when we are going to say that they are reproducing in the host cell, but what is the mode of their reproduction there? First of all, they will make their protein coat. This protein coat will be synthesized separately. Then their DNA or RNA genetic material will be synthesized separately. Means like this is the host cell, and first of all they will synthesize the protein coat, the capsid, and side by side they will synthesize their DNA or RNA, and then these two things will be assembled. They are formed separately. The complete structure is not formed at the same time. These are assembled later. First of this capsid and the genetic material will be assembled later. So this is not a true type of reproduction. They don't have protoplasm. This is a very important feature they should possess if they have to be considered under living things. They are not having any protoplasm, any living reaction, any raw material. They are not having. They don't have any energy forming reaction or energy saving compounds, so that they can obtain energy for their reactions or metabolic activities. Actually, they lack metabolic activities. They are also not showing any type of sensitivity, any type of movement. So these are the properties which but because they are also having the properties which are placing them towards the living things or living organisms category, that's why the viruses are still present on the boundary wall of living and non-living things. RNA viruses, as I have told you, they also another property that the living property they possess, that the RNA viruses they mutate means they undergo changes in their genetic material, as like the AIDS virus, the coronavirus, they undergo mutation at very fast rate, and this mutations brings about the variations in them. This is a property of living organisms. Okay, so this is the general view about the viruses, that we can't place them clearly in the living category or non-living category because they possess both the type of features. That's why they are on the boundary wall. Now another type of infectious agents that I am going to quote here is the virions. Virions, if this DNA or RNA is extracted from this virus, then the left part is the virion. But there are some other infectious agents which are known as viroids. It was observed that there is a disease, that is potato spindle tuber disease, and this disease, infectious agent for this disease was studied by Marshall in 1922, but who is responsible for this disease, what the organisms look like, the pathogens look like, the information was provided by Theo Diener. Viroids are not actually viruses. Viroids are again the infectious agents which are made up of infecting or infectious RNA only. Difference between virus and viroids is that viruses, they have a protein cover around their DNA or RNA, whatever genetic material they possess. But the viroids, they are naked RNA. It is not enveloped by any protein coat. This is the very first difference between viroids and the viruses. Second point, the RNA in these cases can be single stranded or double stranded, but in case of viroids, the RNA is folded. It appears like double stranded RNA. It is actually single stranded, but it appears double stranded RNA because of its folding. Third point of difference is the viroids have very low molecular weight. Means it is in it can be 1 lakh Daltons. Low molecular weight infectious agents are the viroids, while these viruses are high molecular weight if they are compared with the viroids. So both of these agents are actually the infectious agents in all in the various types of host. One more thing that we should remind, viroids are only the plant infectious agents. They are not reported to infect the animals. So far, there are reports of infections in the plants only. But the viroids, these viruses, they have a variety of hosts: fungus, plants, animals, bacteria. So these are the nucleoproteinous ultramicroscopic forms which are neither placed in cellular forms or living forms, nor they are placed in non-living forms, just because of few properties they are possessing. So I hope this lecture is clear to you.